Good morning, everyone. Like to, somebody's, welcome everyone to the regular Committee of the Whole meeting of Wednesday, September 27th. My name is Ian Morrison. I'll be chairing the meeting today. Just note that there's a number of our directors are coming in via WebEx from off-site locations, and if you're feeling unwell, I hope you're feeling better, and thank you for not exposing any of us to anything that you might have. You may notice as well a number of orange shirts on your screen. I'll leave the recognition of that to our board chair at the board meeting today. And before we get underway, I would like to recognize that the CVRD is on the unceded territories of the Cowichan, Malahat, Subasit, Penelakut, Staminas, Layaxan, Pakwachan, Dididat, and Pachidat nations, whose people have walked gently here for thousands of years. With that, I'd like to welcome alternate director Vomaka to the meeting today, and I welcome everyone who is attending virtually. And with that, I would turn to Ms. Boyd.
Thank you, Chair. We have a motion to approve the agenda.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Are there any opposed? None opposed, the motion carries. Ms. Boyd?
Thank you, Chair. We have a Committee of the Whole meeting minutes from September 13th, that the minutes of the Committee of the Whole meeting from September 13th be adopted.
Moved, seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed, motion carries. Just before we go on to the next thing, I should also mention too, we have our CAO sitting at the table today, and luckily, due to the number of members attending virtually, I believe she's indicated she's going to be joining the board meetings on a fairly regular basis, space permitting, of course, and perhaps even our electoral area services committee. So with that, I welcome you to the table with us, and thank you for joining us. Ms. Boyd, next item.
Thank you. We have no business arising from the minutes, and we have next the public input period. The public input period is to offer the public an opportunity to comment on agenda items before the committee considers them. The public input period procedure policy allows for an allotment of 15 minutes total, where speakers are welcome to comment on any items on the agenda up to a maximum of 3 minutes. This excludes items that are or have been subject to a public hearing. The speaker should comment in a polite, calm, and courteous manner using respectful language, civility, and decorum.
So now is where I invite anyone in the gallery who would like to provide input on today's agenda to please come forward. And I guess we could ask, did anyone register to join us online for public input? Looking to the gallery, I think everyone might be here for other reasons later in the agenda. So with that, next item, Ms. Boyd.
Thank you, Chair. We have delegations. We have in person Natasha Overdoon and online Maya Gutman from Cooks Isle Watershed Planning Process regarding a Cooks Isle watershed planning process.
Welcome. I'm sure it's been explained. You've got 10 minutes. If you run into, this is an important topic to all of us here. If you need extra time, just give us an indication, if you will, and we'll see whether the committee is open to that. I'm sure they will be. As I said, welcome, and please proceed.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here today. And I think there was a way to show some slides. Perfect. There they are. And I think I can advance them. I'll start just with introducing myself. My name is Natasha Overdoon. I'm a facilitator with Compass Resource Management. It's a firm based in Vancouver. I live in Nanaimo. And I'm working for the province and for Cowichan Tribes in the role of Joint Executive Director for the Cooks Isle Watershed Planning Process. Thanks for welcoming a presentation on this topic. We are at the start of what will be a 3-year planning process, and seeing today is hopefully the first of many conversations. My objective here today really was simply to introduce the planning process and the team, share some background with you on how we got here, what the priorities are, what the governance structure looks like for this government-to-government process, give you a sense of the current status, where we're at, and next steps, and again, really with the intent of opening up a conversation. I'll start with describing the drivers, why a plan is needed in this watershed. And this summer illustrates those drivers better than I can describe. So you've been seeing it. In the Coquesila, water demand in the dry summer and fall is exceeding water available. There's not enough flows in the river to support the demand from users and ecosystem needs. And in the winter, flood events are impacting communities and ecosystems. And that's caused not only by increasingly extreme weather, but also by extreme changes in the forest landscape. Water shortages in the Coquesila are getting drastic enough that all of the voluntary efforts that farmers and residents are doing, things like conservation, coordinating irrigation, all the things that people are really trying to do their best, are not really cutting it. And the province is actually having to make interventions to stop users from watering to keep water in the river. The current management system is not set up to deal with this year after year. We can't continue in crisis response mode. The cracks and the strain, I think, are starting to show, and we're seeing the impact on ecosystems, on people's well-being, their mental health, livelihoods, and our social fabric. I think we're really seeing that water is becoming a real source of conflict and tension between neighbors. And right now, governments and communities don't really have a plan for how to adapt and deal with this new kind of worsening reality. But this plan and this process to get to a plan is really intended to be that solution for everyone, to work together to try to think ahead proactively about how we can work together and manage these scarce resources. So that's the big kind of in-your-face ecological, social driver. There are also legal and governance drivers for this plan. First of all, the rights and values and knowledge that Indigenous nations have for water and for watersheds are now being recognized by federal and provincial governments and society at large. We're beginning to appreciate just how much creative, wise approaches Indigenous people have that we can learn from. And courts and elected decision makers are recognizing that Indigenous people's rights and interests haven't been treated equitably or fairly, and we need to shift to a governance and management system where that authority is shared. Part of the story here is related to BC's water law. So some of you might be more familiar than others. I'm not a lawyer, I won't get into the weeds of it, but BC's water law is the Water Sustainability Act. It came into force in 2016, and it replaced legislation from 1906. Hadn't updated the water law since 1906. And the new legislation continues to be based on the kind of colonial premise that the Crown owns the water, manages the water. So it wasn't a fundamental rehaul, but it did introduce a few promising things. And one of the really promising things it introduced is the ability to develop water sustainability plans, or WSPs. And these plans are notable because it gives government the legal ability to create new regulations for water use and supply and storage, and also new regulations for land use. So we often talk about the need for plans to have teeth, to be able to affect real change, and the WSP can do that, can actually have teeth to change the system of how rights are managed. So it's really quite significant, and significantly, one of these hasn't been done in BC before. So everyone's figuring this out for the first time. And a couple of years ago, Cowichan Tribes and the province and their partners began to scope out, okay, what can a WSP look like? And in May, the chief of Cowichan Tribes and ministers of 3 agencies signed a historic government-to-government agreement to do a plan. And they've agreed on what the high-level priorities are for the watershed, and those are really solutions for the things that I just talked about. The vision is for a healthy watershed, including healthy flows, healthy forests, food security. There's really this broad guiding vision for a better future. The agreement is on the website. It's public. You can take a look at it if you haven't seen it, and that'll give you a good sense of how sort of innovative this is. It also includes Cowichan teachings, and we have, I know I'm told you're trying to go paperless, but we have a brochure of the teachings that are going to be guiding the work, and it's really, really quite powerful to see this included in this kind of agreement. I want to mention that what they've agreed to is a whole of watershed plan inclusive of a WSP, this specific legal instrument. As I've mentioned, a WSP is really powerful, but both Cowichan Tribes and the province recognize that it's not the only tool. It's recognized that local government has legal tools, has decision making, has management responsibilities that could contribute to a whole of watershed approach. And of course, Cowichan Tribes has their own laws, their own programs, their own approaches, which can also be included in the plan. Unique here is that the planning process, in theory, can also be considering private forest lands. It's not just a water plan, it is whole of watershed, and it can include private forest land. We still don't know what that looks like, and the conversations with the private forest sector are in early days, and I see Chair Morrison nodding, because I'm sure we all appreciate that it's going to be challenging to figure out how to work together and to come up with real, tangible options that we can evaluate and action. But that is the intent, that is part of the agreement, that is part of the scope. I'm trying to go to my next slide, but it's not working. I don't know if you can do anything about that, Rebecca. There we go. Okay. I just wanted to share some quotes from Chief Whitson and Minister Cullen from the day of the signing of the ceremony. And just reiterate that the plan really offers a way to respect Cowichan Tribes' rights and authority and start to establish this new way of doing business, new way of making decisions. We can talk more about this, maybe if you have questions. I won't spend too long here, but I wanted to share the government-to-government structure, the org chart. It shows as best as a one-dimensional figure can show, the flow of information and communication and decision-making. So I'll just highlight a couple features here, that there is a senior table of government-to-government representatives, the province and Cowichan Tribes. This is the table that will provide oversight, make decisions, recommend a watershed plan to the elected leadership. There's a planning team that's doing the heavy lifting. That's where I sit, and we're the point of contact. And then what I really wanted to highlight is that there's a strong interest in seeking input and advice from those who live in the watershed, work in the watershed, will be affected by the plan, and have knowledge about what the plan should do. So there are 2 advisory tables. There is a Cowichan Tribes internal table. It's a space for Cowichan members, elders to talk and learn more together about what's important to Cowichan people in this plan. And then there is a collaborative community advisory table. And we just wrapped up the selection process for this. It will be a 19-member group, and we've invited agricultural producers, irrigators of different sizes, the private forest sector, both Mosaic and another woodlot licensee, individuals who represent kind of ecological interests, community neighborhood associations, some science, technical folks, and CVRD, both staff and the Area E elected official, Allison. So this table will work through the steps of the planning process and make recommendations on the content of the plan. And so we see this being a really important place for trying to start moving past some of that conflict, to learn together, and actually have a group of people who will own this and advocate for it in the community.
Natasha, can you hang on for a second? Could I have a motion to extend? Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Please continue.
Sorry, I'm taking too long. Thanks. The other thing I wanted to highlight here that's really pertinent to CVRD is this box on the bottom called work streams. So we expect that a lot of the really important deliberation will happen in those advisory tables, but some of that heavy lifting and analysis needs to happen in smaller groups, and that's where those work streams come into play. So we imagine these will be focused on different subjects, topics, and one of those we hope will be related to CVRD, regional development, housing, kind of the topics that are of interest between CVRD and the other partners. I'm hoping we can scope that out together and that CVRD can really play a lead role in helping us lead that area of work. In the interests of time, I'll move on, although I could talk about governance structures all day. And I won't dwell too much here either, but I have this slide included so that we can return to it if you have questions. This shows steps of a planning process. Those who were part of the Cowichan Water Use Plan process have experienced this. It's the same sort of methodology. The steps are very similar as to when the governments and CVRD were looking at what the height of the new weir should be. The focus in this process is going to be on defining the diverse values, all the things that matter, then developing options and evaluating those in a way that's really transparent so we can see how trade-offs were considered across values and how final decisions were made. There won't be any silver bullets. Like, there will be hard conversations and there will be hard choices. So this doesn't get us around that, but it does set up a way to look at that really openly and transparently. And just as an example of the kinds of options we might look at, we might ask things like related to water storage. Can water be stored during the winter to be available during summer? So there's obviously no big lake in the Coxsila like there's in the Cowichan, so are there other options for water storage? Can we look at dugouts and tanks or artificial groundwater recharge? Like, what are the actual options? We need to really get into the meat of that. Would those work for farmers? Would they work for irrigators? You can see how much input we're going to need as we do that. Luckily, we're not starting from scratch. During the scoping phase, Cowichan Tribes and the province did a lot of technical research and assessment. They got community input on what matters, so we're not at ground zero here on some of this options assessment. This slide shows the stages over the next 3 years. I'm hoping we are getting into conversations with CVRD in more detail here in 2023 and 2024 and really starting to ramp up the collaboration. And the final point I'll emphasize is just the importance of community involvement. Again, we have those advisory tables and work streams, but we'll also have all the usual communication bells and whistles to be really trying to keep people involved in this. The government partners really understand that this process needs to speak to people and involve them. People want to take action, they want to contribute, there's a lot of energy. We want that to be directed in the right way, in a positive way, towards solutions. Thank you, and I'm happy to take any questions.
So can I ask you to lower your presentation so I can see my colleagues? Whoever's
Yes.
in charge of that. Okay, I see I've got Director Stone and Wilson and myself. Director Stone, please ask away.
I think Director Wilson was first, but I'll take it. I'll make it brief. There's so many things that we could talk about this and how important it is and how momentous it is. But I think for many people who maybe before they weren't elected didn't know about the challenges around private managed forest lands, but we had a number of meetings, both North Cowichan and the CVRD last week around that work and how important it is in the recognition that the science tells us that is a major input to both flooding and drought. And until we can get that right, I don't think we're going to be able to engineer a million wonderful magic solutions that are going to address these problems. So the restoration of these ecosystems is critically important. I just want to thank my colleagues that came before me and brought knowledge to the conversation and that advocacy work, because I think maybe all of us have sort of picked that up and learned more. I'm a forestry kid. I absolutely support the forest industry, but there's enough bounty in our forests to protect our most critical watersheds, and I just want to thank you and the whole team for all the work. And the province deserves some respect. None of this is going to move fast enough, and I think that's going to be the biggest push that we have, is that we need to move quickly. I think we all know what some of these answers to some of these difficult questions are, so I just hope we don't get stuck in a protracted consultation that is just meant to sort of wear the naysayers down when we know what those answers are, and just be ready to move to the difficult conversations. But I'm really excited about this work, and I think it's the model that we need to employ, whether it's in the Chemainus watershed, Cowichan River, all of these different watershed challenges we have, and it even goes to our smallest watersheds, whether it's Bannon or Holland Creek, and we just see it too much, and we need to have water for people to drink and for people to farm, but we also need to make sure that our ecosystems are healthy so that we can serve all those needs. Thanks.
Director Wilson, question for our delegation. Turn on your microphone. We'll come around back to you. So I've got myself on the list, and Director Justice as well. Yeah, Director Stone really hit on something that's really important, and I see our friends in the gallery. Cowichan Basin Water Management Plan from, I think it was 05-06, was a great exercise and great document, but, and the but, Director Stone touched on it, so we didn't have the full participation of private managed forest land companies, and great work has been done. The watershed board born out of that. I appreciate this as a government exercise. We could be supportive and participate at the extent of providing knowledge and expertise and the likes. Have you got any insights as to how you will bring the forest companies into the tent, so to speak?
The forest companies will be part of the collaborative advisory table. And so far there have been really positive conversations with them. My sense is that they genuinely hope to contribute to this, and that they're open to looking at options for peak, like how to better manage peak flows. We need to get to the more detailed levels of conversation about what that collaboration looks like, but I actually do feel pretty optimistic that this is a good ground for working together. I think there's a recognition that it's better to be involved in this than not, because there is actually the teeth behind this to make changes, and it's in the forest sector's interest to be part of that conversation. I think the challenge is going to be getting to the details. What are the actual on the land changes, whether it's changes to harvest, whether it's changes to how roads are built. I don't know, I'm not a forest expert, but I think getting to the actual things that we can evaluate, recommend, implement is absolutely where we need to go.
Director Justice.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Natasha, for that presentation. Very interesting stuff. But I was curious whether you could elaborate a little bit on some of the other work streams, what they might be aiming at.
Thanks, that's a great question. One of the work streams will really focus on the water use, supply, storage, flows side. And I think that'll be, in this whole of watershed approach, I think we're going to have a constant tension, a healthy tension between kind of how much we focus on forestry and land use and how much we focus on water, because there are, I think, opportunities for changes in how water is used, and how it's stored and managed. So we need to start looking at those options, including looking at the storage options, looking at what the options actually are for managing licenses differently. Like, that's a question the province hasn't looked at. This is the first plan of this kind, so it really needs work done around that. We also expect, I think, a focus on agriculture, and Ministry of Agriculture is one of the signatories. And then, as I said, I would hope to see a work stream focused on collaboration with local government and looking at where there are shared interests, what you think this plan can do for you, and vice versa. Like, I think that is something we see as an area of work that I'm hoping we can scope out together.
Let's try Director Wilson again. Director Wilson? Go to Director Nicholson.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Natasha. You've got your work cut out for you, but a really interesting time. I'm just reflecting on the meeting that we had yesterday with the agricultural community for the OCP modernization, and I think it was a really good example of how the communities of people out there are increasingly fearful, I would say, of the future and change. And the one thing that we've really tried to do all along with the Coxsila is to emphasize that finger pointing isn't helpful, and that everyone really needs to do their part. So certainly domestic water use is a minor component in the scheme of things, apparently, but it's really important that everyone do their part. And so that's something that I hope that we can continue to focus on, and I hope that the CVRD, that we can step up and support this process to make sure that everyone's doing their part from whatever jurisdiction we have as far as water goes. Thanks.
Director Martman.
Thank you, and thank you for your presentation and the work that's started and going to continue. I'm interested in your thoughts about how the province's water licensing backlog might impact your work, and do you see any other pinch points similar to that?
That is certainly a pinch point. I think another pinch point is the fact that as we go through this process, we're likely going to see more droughts and have drought response, and there's sometimes a disconnect between these longer-term proactive planning processes and the short-term reactionary things that happen. So one of the things we're really trying to pay attention to is communication and coordination between ministries and between ministries and local groups, to hopefully avoid situations where people are getting mixed messaging and conflicting messaging. I think that's going to be needs to be a big emphasis, that communications. In terms of the backlog on groundwater licensing, I don't think we have an answer for that, but it is something that we have the opportunity to address. There are some barriers, for example, that irrigators, farmers face in getting licenses for storage. Like, we actually have an opportunity to figure out what those barriers are and address them through this process in a local way, and that's unique to this process.
Follow up?
Thank you. Yeah, it's the things sometimes we don't see coming that can be hard to navigate. The other question is, I see this is sort of moving, through to 2026, and that's the next election cycle. And what's your plans on coming back to this group? And I guess what I always look for is sort of the continuity between elected sessions and trying to give you the support and momentum to help you with momentum. So I'm looking forward to how you would be reporting back or updating us.
I'd really appreciate if we could have regular briefings. I don't know if that's twice a year or quarterly, and I hope that we can build some of that continuity through working relationships with staff. There's also going to be a provincial election midway through this planning process, so thinking about continuity there too. One of the ideas that we have is to actually really fairly early in the planning process lay out pretty clearly the areas that we're going to be looking at, sort of a heads up, this plan will be disruptive. You know, make sure that that's not a surprise at the end of the planning process, that we're flagging quite early. Yes, looking at licenses is part of the process. Yes, looking at storage and investments in infrastructure is part of the process. Looking at changes to private forest lands is part of the, like really signaling all of that early and making sure we're building understanding and support for that throughout and not just leaving it till the end is going to be crucial, I think.
Mr. Chair, can you hear me now?
Impeccable timing, Director Wilson. Please proceed.
Thank you very much. Yeah, it seems like one of my HDMI ports or one of my USB ports is not working on my other computer. Thank you very much for that. And I missed a lot of the conversation and questions there, so maybe this has been asked already. One of the things that was mentioned there was this is a 3-year planning process, and I understand that there's already a huge amount of work gone on, and there's a lot more work to do. But you know, given the situation, and you've used the word drastic quite often, is there any way that this process can be accelerated, maybe? Because it is a drastic situation. And I have a follow-up as well, please, Mr. Chair.
I can honestly say that we're moving as fast as we can.
Okay. Okay, that's as much as I need to know. Thank you. And one of the things that came up yesterday, there was a meeting of the farmers or farming community yesterday in Cobble Hill, and you brought up the question of storage, and this is something which I think is going to come to the forefront more and more. With the possibility of storage, especially on with the farmers on their farms, and this is something which I think we need to look at. The biggest thing which came up when I was speaking with a lot of farmers afterwards was, who's going to pay for this? Where's the money going to come from? And that's the biggest problem, because to build these structures is not cheap. So is there any hope of grant money or funding available for the farmers?
There isn't at the upfront here. It would be really great if we were starting this planning process with multi-million-dollar kind of bank account ready for that implementation. But I think what we can feel hopeful about is that the province, Cowichan Tribes, CBRD is really paying attention to the recommendations, and we'll be building our influence over the next couple of years. So when we have those recommendations about solutions and there's community support for those solutions, we'll be in a good position for attracting some of that resourcing.
Good.
And I think the other thing too, just to mention on that, is there's going to be a host of different storage options. Some will be more feasible than others. We really need to actually still evaluate that, like what storage options make sense. And as Chair Stone said, we need to be cautious to not jump to that as the only part of the solution. There are other aspects to the solution as well, but we need to evaluate what the right storage options could be and what the barriers are. Chair Martin mentioned, Mr. Martin mentioned that there's regulatory barriers on some of those at a practical level, so we don't want to recommend things that have regulatory hurdles, right? So that's all part of the evaluation that needs to happen.
Okay, lovely. Thank you very much.
And I think I'll go, Director McClinton.
Thank you, Chair, for indulging me. Just a quick question to follow up on the finance side of it. Can you just elaborate on who's funding it and what sort of bang for the buck are the taxpayers getting for the consultation portion of this?
Sorry, can you clarify?
Yeah, how is the consultation being funded? Who's paying for it?
There's funding from the province for the process, including the advisory tables and the communications and engagement. So there's kind of process funding in place.
Director Martman to close. you reached for your mic just at the end there, so.
I guess what I wanted to close was to hopefully through the group here, encourage you to come back. I'm not sure about the frequency, but certainly I'm interested. Hopefully the rest of the board is, or the committee is. So thank you for your presentation.
Thanks.
Any closing remarks?
I hope the same on behalf of Cowichan tribes in the province. The hope is to have an ongoing conversation and to actually work together on practical areas of shared interest. So I hope this is the start of further discussion.
And I'd like to close off by thanking you again for coming and you know, exposing and explaining what the process is. And I think it's important because of the reach that the people sitting around this table have within our community, even though it's an external process. I wasn't elected yet when the Cowichan Basin Water Management Plan came out, but it was kind of like it emerged, and it was a surprise to a lot of people when it came out, even though fantastic work had been done over a number of years to produce that. And I think that it's incumbent upon all of us to not only you know, keep informed, but be up to speed on what's going on, so that when a final report comes forward, we can help to disseminate that information amongst our community members. This is an important. This is the first. This is really important that it's done well, and I think we're all sitting here supporting you and cheering you on for this. So with that, thank you very much for coming today.
Thank you.
Ms. Boyd.
Thank you, Chair. Our next delegation is Judy Stafford from the Cowichan Green Community regarding funding for food security programming.
Good morning, Judy. Press the button on the base of the mic. Now we can hear you and see you.
Awesome, thank you. And where am I down here?
So you know you've got 10 minutes. I know
Oh,
you're
I've
well
got my
ahead of this.
stopwatch going right here.
Perfect.
Because anybody who knows me knows I can chat. Okay. Sorry, I just want that to get going here. Come on. Oh, there we go. Okay, thank you. Whoa. Did I do that? Something? Okay. So thank you for allowing me to be here today. It's actually been since before COVID that I was physically in this room, and there's some new faces that I haven't even seen or met yet, and some old faces, so I'm really happy to be here. You know. So that's an interesting slide to follow, because of course, obviously, water and food have a lot to do with each other, so I'll just jump right in here. So I just wanted to give a background on who we are and you know, what we've been up to for 20 years. So food security is our mandate.
Can you hang on a second?
You bet.
Everybody at home see the presentation? No. Yeah, okay. We wouldn't want to make you have to go back over the whole presentation again.
Get my 30 seconds back, right?
Aha, there we go.
Oh, there's a clock here too.
Okay, Judy, from
Okay,
the top.
it's from the top. Okay, so food security obviously is our mandate, which is very broad, and it certainly covers everything from teaching our summer camp to food policy, agriculture, supporting farmers. So food security is a very, very wide definition, which can sometimes be challenging to talk about in 10 minutes. So we formed in 2004. We also have a charity that we started in 2014, which focuses on education and training. We do a food recovery program. We have a grocery store. We have a coupon program. We do community meals. We have the Farm and Food Hub on Beverly Street. We have Kin Park beside the high school. We do a resiliency project with the City of Duncan. We also manage the Cobb Oven with the City of Duncan. And we have social enterprises, which is businesses within our nonprofit. So I'll get into these in a little bit more detail. So the food recovery idea came from the city when Phil was the mayor in 2011, and he came to me and he said, we need to recover this food that's getting thrown in the garbage. So we tried actually for 7 years to get that project launched and find some funding, which we finally did in 2017-18 through the Ministry of Poverty Reduction and Social Development. we started that project, and we have from then till now recovered and redistributed over 1.2 million pounds of food that would otherwise go to the landfill or to farmers. We work with about 25 or 30 organizations that we collect and distribute that food to. We collect from 6 grocery stores, 3 bakeries, and we also have farmers and processors that drop up to us all the time. It's nothing like a Friday afternoon at 5 to 5 trying to leave, and Island Hot House shows up with 600 pounds of peppers. But, you know, be careful what you ask for. And the only funding we have right now is a small gaming grant and Dabber Bingo in locally that gives us $6,000. So we don't have a lot of funding that carries that project on. In 2019, we started our low-cost grocery store, which is in downtown. We sell some of the recovered food, fresh food, donations. We support several programs. We partner with Island Health on Pregnancy Connections, where pregnant moms and new moms get access to meat and eggs. And we run our 2 coupon programs from there. So we have 120 families and low-income seniors that get $25 a week to shop in our store. It doesn't sound like a lot, but you know, when the produce we can sell for quite cheap, you can get quite a big bag of groceries. Not like when you go to Thrifties, which is interesting because Thrifties, when they have really expensive vegetables that they don't sell, like sometimes when cauliflower is like $9, we end up with cases of it because people aren't buying it. And so it's kind of a weird dichotomy that you have this really expensive food that we end up getting for free. We also have the Farmers Market Coupon Program. We've been running that since 2013, and we have 140 families on that get $27 a week to shop at the Duncan Farmers Market on Saturdays. So our community meals is really gotten unbelievably busy since COVID. We do Meals on Wheels. We supply the breakfast and dinners for the village. That's 34 residents that live in the pods on Trunk Road. We also started last year a youth meal program, and we give 15 meals every day. We work with Island Health, and they have outreach workers that go out onto the streets, and they take those meals out to the kids that are hanging out under the bridge. And we also received some funding a couple of years ago for community disaster meals. So we have 500 frozen meals that we rotate every 3 months, and those are available to the community if we have another disaster like we did with the floods where people were displaced. So we received some funding, and we helped support quite a few people with some money from United Way that were in the gap. Like, you know, they didn't qualify for the Red Cross Disaster Fund, and they were still displaced. So we supported quite a few families through that. And we also supply some frozen meals to Cowichan Valley Youth Services and Lake Cowichan. And so last year we prepared over 16,000 meals. So the Farm and Food Hub on Beverly Street has changed a lot since we were lucky enough to lease that land with North Cowichan in 2015. It's had a lot of iterations over the years, but it is a going concern. If you haven't been down there lately, I invite you to come for a tour. It's pretty spectacular. We have a Thursday market, we have an education center, we have a native plant nursery, we have a seed farm, a seed bank, a seed library. We're really making that a community hub. We also received money from the Ministry of Agriculture and a few other funders to set up a food hub. So the Ministry of Agriculture has designated, I think there's 8 or there might be more now across the province, where we're going to have a HACCP certified processing kitchen and a warehouse distribution center. The co-op will be moving there and co-locating with us. And there will be training facilities and office space, etc. And so we're kind of like in the middle of that, although it looks like our DP might go in front of North Cowichan Council on October 18th. It's been 3 long years. We're so close, I can taste it. And then we have Kin Park, so we've been working in that park, again with North Cowichan request to do some community gardens. We started that in 2006, and it's just a going concern. It's such a beautiful park. We have a market garden there, we have a demonstration garden, we have our summer camp. We set up this little community food pantry. One of our interns had the idea, she raised $500, and I was kind of like, I don't know. You know, when you just want to let people kind of have some autonomy. And so she did all the work, got the little shed built by the VIU carpentry class, and I'm telling you, that is the most going concern little food pantry. Every day we take food there from Food Recovery, and people are lined up like half an hour before. People in that direct neighborhood rely on that food every day now, and it's something that was such a small idea is having a huge impact. And so at the park, we work with the schools, VIU, we have a partnership with the library, and then you see some of our summer camp kids there. The first day of camp this year, they harvested a bunch of food from the gardens and they took it over to the food bank. I think that's really important for the kids to learn. The Resiliency Project was started with the City of Duncan. They asked us if we would help do some meadow making and clean up of parks. So now we have 5 community meadows. We work with 5 schools. We have a native plant nursery, a native seed bank, and the intention is to try and restore some of the park areas like Rotary that was a lot of just grass and overgrown, and ivy that's taken over Centennial Park. So this project goes in and helps clean up some of that, and we have a lot of workshops of what to do when you end up harvesting tons of ivy. You can make very cool things. The cob oven was something, again, I didn't really want to do it. The City of Duncan came to us and said, would we take over the cob oven? And I said, I don't know. It's a lot of work. So we agreed. It got restored. It was built originally by Community Kitchens and House of Friendship, and then during COVID, it kind of died off a little bit. So, we said, okay, and now it is absolutely one of my most favorite projects. Every week, we serve free pizza on Thursdays, and we get about 15 to 20 kids. They're showing up, they're coming, and we're doing workshops with them. I was there the other day, and there was a couple of kids who were talking about, we'd really like to get a job. So the project coordinator called the coordinator at Work BC, who came out to the park and sat there at the picnic table with them and helped them fill out some forms. And now those 2 youth are actually in a training program at Work BC right now, and they're well on their way to getting employment, which I just think is absolutely heartwarming. Those kids would not have gone to the 3rd floor of Work BC. That's just way too intimidating for most of us. And the community partnerships that are built around this project is just astounding. There's a lot of youth groups that bring their kids out to see us on Thursdays. And then just overall, we've been established in this community for almost 20 years or more than 20 years. We were asked March of 2020 to set up this emergency food task force, which we did. And within a week, we were meeting twice a week back then. And we had 30 to 40 organizations, including the school board and city and community organizations, and we still meet every week to this day just to discuss where's the food going, who's got food, what's happening, what programs are available, and we coordinate a lot of those discussions every month. We're part of our Cowichan Health Network, the Service Providers Network. We're a Chamber of Commerce Black Tie sponsor. That was really fun. I was on the board of the DBIA for 11 years, and we have a staff member who's on there now. We support Meals on the Ground, which is a free meal program, which runs Monday, Wednesday, Fridays at United Church. And then we've incubated or helped a lot of other organizations like Cycle Cowichan, Transition Cowichan, Island Farmers Alliance, things like that. And then as far as our connections with the CVRD, we have a long, sordid history. We've certainly appreciated a partnership that we have had with you and the funding that we have received over the years. We used to receive grants and aid. We've had the support for our van that is just incredible, and that's what picks up all the food. This says I'm out of time, but it's wrong, isn't it? Because I had 30 seconds.
Motion to extend, moved and seconded, all in favor? Any opposed? Please continue, Judy.
I'm almost done. We did environmental education. We had a contract with the CVRD to go into schools and teach about the environmental education for, I think it was transit, water, and I can't remember. That was a while ago. I was on the Environment Commission, the Agriculture Committee. We have a staff member who's on the Solid Waste Management Committee. And then you've been a big partner with us on the Ministry of Agriculture funding that we received for the Food Hub. Those are some of our stats for last year. And then I just wanted to touch briefly on the COVID response. The day we were sort of, when this was all coming to light, I just had in my mind okay, nobody's going to get laid off. I remember having a staff meeting, and I didn't realize what I was saying, because not only did nobody get laid off, but we ended up like just being so astronomically busy. We certainly did not close our doors. We were open really long hours. We were coordinating a lot of emergency response. We grant wrote like crazy. Victoria Foundation called me and said, okay, we don't fund Cowichan, but if you can get a meeting in 2 days, we can get you some funding. So we got a meeting in 2 days, and we got, I'm going to say, I don't know, $300,000 or $400,000, and it was like Christmas. I was just like handing out checks. So the response that we received for COVID was significant. Food security was really high priority at the time, and we were doing hampers. There was construction on our street, and I remember like hand bombing hampers out, 300, 400, 500 hampers with Cowichan Tribes, just trying to get food out to people. We supported all the food at the Ramada, and we had Christmas in Ramada. There's one of our guys there. And that's when we started the coupon program, and we did the disaster meals, and we did a flood response where we still have some gas cards and meal cards. And then also when there was ferry disruption, we helped Penelakut Island with 400 meals. So we hired a taxi, water taxi, and got food out to Penelakut. So just wrapping up, just some testimonies that I just think are quite astounding, like what somebody who's in our coupon program just said, we would starve without you. And then one other elder who started receiving fresh vegetables every week told the coordinator that she canceled her Maid appointment, that she was planning on doing assisted suicide the following week, and then she canceled that because once she started eating fresh vegetables, that she was able to get out and go for walks, and she no longer wanted to use that program. One of the other like little letters there is from someone that used to participate in a program at the Ramada where we would bring meals in, and then we did sort of like a mentorship training program, and we had 6 people that were at the Ramada that came and worked at our kitchen. And Tracy still works with us, so she's now employed by us. She's living up in Paddle Road. She's off the street. She's off drugs, and it's just such a success story, and we're just so proud of her. So just kind of money obviously is tight. We know that. There's a lot of interest competing for the same funds. I think I just want to touch on the meeting that was yesterday, the agriculture meeting. When I walked away from that, I was thinking, I think there's some opportunities for us to work more closely together again. Maybe get a contract like we did with the environment, education, and support the agriculture needs in this community. We definitely have the community engagement piece. We have the trust in the community. We've worked with farmers and the Cowichan Agriculture Society, places like that over the years. So I think there's some opportunity not just to say, okay, it'd be great if you just gave us a bunch of money every year and we were a line item. But maybe there's some opportunities to just figure out a way that we can support you as well with some of the work in an efficient way, and would also help support our organization. So that's my pitch. So
Thanks,
happy
Judy.
Answer any questions.
So let me start by saying, when we were at the ABICC, was it the agriculture presentation, and Judy and Barry and a bunch of folks were there. Those of us from the Cowichan Valley were walking around with our chest puffed out and feeling pretty proud of the work that Judy and her group has done. And I think we could probably spend quite a bit of time going through questions and peppering you with your extensive knowledge. But I'm wondering if you're available, or if you can be available for directors to see you on a one-off to have a tour of your facility and to get that firsthand on the ground opportunity to see what you're doing at your facility. Is that something that's a possibility?
Oh, sure. Well, we're always open to that. We've met with a lot of directors over the years, so happy to do one-offs. And just because I think when you come and see firsthand, like when you see the food sort, it's just astounding. Like 9 o'clock in the morning, it's absolute complete chaos. There's like literally thousands of pounds of food everywhere, and then by the end of the day, it's all magically gone out. And the farm too is pretty impressive. Both farms. I don't get out as much as I'd like to, and when I was at the Cobb Oven, it was the most magical experience, and I'm just so proud of a project that I didn't want to do. The mayor of Staples isn't here. Is she? No? Okay, good. I just think it's just magical what goes on in there, so I'd be happy to tour anyone around who's interested.
Fantastic. I'm going to go to Director Toporowski. Anyone else want on the list? Yes. Go ahead, Deborah.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Judy. Just wanted to thank Couch and Green community for stepping up and having the Fruit Save program. I think that's what it's called, where volunteers come out and pick your fruit. My father-in-law lost his wife on Victoria Day, and we were trying to figure out how to get all this fruit picked because she was the sergeant for all of us, but basically. And your volunteers just helped set up, the amazing team to come out and pick the fruit, and it took the worry away from him, and he was able to, and also if people don't know this, they leave fruit behind from your tree. So they'll leave you a bucket or 3 buckets or whatever. So it's really awesome. And then they take the rest away and then produce it and give it out and all of that. So, and also the refresh place, when I went in there to fill out the forms and talk to somebody, the transformation of what you have done is so amazing. So yes, I concur with what Chair Ian Morrison said about other directors going and checking this out. But I'd be interested to see the behind scenes too as well. So thank you.
I didn't even mention Fruit Save. Right now we have about 2,500 pounds of apples in the office. It does smell a bit funky in there. And we'll be pressing them tomorrow, making some community cider. It's delicious.
Director Deck.
Well, I read your presentation again last night, and I'm just completely astounded with the work that you've done, all that you've accomplished, how many lives you've touched, and what things would be like if you weren't able to do that anymore, or even as much as you do. So I'm just completely in support of all the work you do. I'm so grateful.
Thank you.
Looking at the screen, I've asked Ms. Boyd to perhaps craft something. There was an ask, and we don't respond to requests at the meeting in which they're made. So what have you got for us? Okay. Motion to refer this item to staff. Moved by Director Stone, seconded by Director Douglas. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed, motion carries. Judy, thank you very much. Keep up the good work.
Thank you so much.
It's awesome, and I think you make everybody proud. I know there's a lot of hard work.
Thank
Did
you.
you have your hand up, Director Stone?
I put my virtual hand up right at the beginning, but that's okay. Judy knows how much I love her.
You're okay then?
You can say it publicly,
Okay.
though, if you want it on the record, like.
They heard it through your mic.
Yeah.
Sorry, I missed
All right.
you, Director.
Thanks
Stone.
again, everyone. I really appreciate it.
Okay, everyone, let's take 5 refresher coffees and, right. All right, everyone, welcome back. We are over to Ms. Boyd.
Thank you, Chair. We have no correspondence or information. We move to reports of R1, report from the Parks and Trails Division regarding 2023 CVRD Regional Active Transportation Plan. I believe we have online Jason Potter to present. And Brian Farquhar.
Mr. Farquhar, would you like to introduce this, please?
Good morning, Mr. Chair and committee. Yes, it's actually wonderful to be here, bringing forward a regional active transportation plan for the Cowichan region that's been 2 years in the making. And so we have Jason Potter, the lead with the consulting team from Bunt Engineering Associates online. He's going to be providing a bit of an overview summary of the overall report. And as noted in the staff report, this transportation plan has been funded in part by the Ministry of Transportation through a $50,000 active transportation network planning grant that has been provided, and we are able to make a claim on it once the plan has been approved by the board. So we may have a friendly amendment to the recommendation if the support of the committee is to wanting to advance this plan to go forward, because we can then make a claim to the province with approval of the plan by the board. But first of all, I want to introduce Jason Potter, who is online. His presentation is up on the screen, so I'll turn it over to Mr. Potter. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Brian. All right. Good morning, everybody. My name is Jason Potter, and I'm a senior transportation planner with Bunt & Associates Engineering, and I work out of our Victoria office. So today I'm here to describe our recently completed active transportation plan. And there we go. So specifically, I will describe how this plan collaborates with other planning efforts in the region. I'll talk about our public engagement process and also the process to develop the recommended network. I'll show the recommended network itself and then speak about some steps towards implementation of the plan. So we'll start with definition of active transportation. So here we're saying it includes any form of human-powered transportation. Traditionally, active transportation was defined as walking and cycling. Now it's often described as walking and rolling to include the growing field of micro-mobility and mobility assist devices, some of which have electric assist to them. The purpose of this plan is to provide CVRD with a prioritized list of regionally focused projects that will enable active transportation connectivity and growth in the region. And it's important to note that having this report is typically a required step towards accessing active transportation grants. There are, of course, 4 municipalities in the region, and each have their own active transportation plans, either completed or underway. So coordinating and connecting with these plans was critical in our process. The focus of this particular plan is on regional connections that connect to and augment these municipal or local level plans. And so this image here was snipped from the report, and it offers a list of important plans to build from. So including official community plans, mobility plans, electoral area community parks and trail plans, transit plans, and etc. Our public engagement was led by Uplift Communications. And here you can see our 4-step program, which started with walk-in wheel tours. The full process included 2 surveys and multiple in-person and online information sessions. We also augmented step 3 for more robust consultation with First Nation communities. In addition to the general public, we also had 2 important stakeholder groups. We had a technical advisory group, which was comprised of representatives of the 4 municipalities and the Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure, who is a critical stakeholder due to their authority over electoral area roads. We also had a project champion group of local area active transportation advocates that helped to raise project awareness and provide their specialized local perspectives. In terms of feedback, we had a lot of online views and visits to the project website. We had 182 people complete our first survey and 168 completed the second survey. The first survey had an interactive map where people could place a pin of areas of interest or concern. So we had 412 pins placed on the map. And yeah, and importantly, we found that 91% of respondents agreed that developing an active transportation network is extremely important for the region. And 90% supported more investment in active transportation. Nearly 90% want to use active transportation to get around the region, and nearly that amount are currently walking or cycling. And in terms of addressing the discrepancy between those that want to use active transportation and those that are, safety was noted as the most important concern. And that's something that we certainly see in all our active transportation plans, be it for a city or a more rural region such as CVRD. And so, and we speak of safety, it's obviously physical safety, but it's also perceived safety, which is can be described as comfort as well. In terms of challenges, so obviously there are a lot of rural roadways within the region that have substandard shoulders currently. And then of course the ministry is the authority for the roadways in electoral areas, so they're a critical partner in this plan. And then of course finding funding streams required to pay for active transportation is always a challenge. In terms of opportunities, the Cowichan Valley Trail is noted as having potential to provide a valuable, high quality network spine. There was also noted preference for road separated multi-use paths when possible, as opposed to widened shoulders. So a lot of these recommendations that are in this plan are either widened shoulders on the roadways or parallel multi-use paths beside the roadways. And then we also, a key opportunity is that in our consultation with the ministry, they're certainly open to shoulder widening, as we've seen them some already within the region, as they can maintain that within their current maintenance practice. In terms of the process to create the prioritized list, we can start with the goal. So we obviously want to provide safe connections between urban areas, between schools, commercial areas, ferry terminals, and also the neighboring regions. So the list of projects that we had to evaluate that came from the public engagement process and also our site visits were evaluated and quantified based on 4 criteria. And I'll get into those a little bit more in the next slide, but they were the regional connectivity, a score for feasibility or cost benefit analysis, a score for community benefit, and then also public input. And the output from this, again, is a prioritized list of high, medium, and low priority projects. And the resulting recommended project list is not meant to be fixed, but rather should be used as a reference point, allowing flexibility to take advantage of collaboration opportunities should they arise. So here's another snip from the report, which illustrates quantification methods for 2 of the 4 criteria. We can get onto the network itself. So the recommended network is comprised of approximately 80 different projects, which have been organized into 3 layers. And grouping improvements segments like this can help streamline funding opportunities. So that was the intention with that. So just to look at this map here on the right, for context, the Trans-Canada Highway in orange, and the existing Cowichan Valley Trail is in the solid green line. And so our first layer of projects speaks to the dark green dotted line here, which is comprised of about 8 projects. And we're calling that the Cowichan Valley Completion and Improvement. And so that's just kind of finishing off and improving the existing Cowichan Valley Trail. The second layer of recommended projects is described as the East Route. And you can see that on the map in the dark blue. And so that route takes a more eastern alignment, connecting Chemainus with Crofton, Maple Bay, Cowichan Bay, Cobble Hill, Shawnigan Lake, and Mill Bay. And finally, the third layer, which is comprised of high, medium, and low priority projects, is called Community Connections, and that's shown on the map with the light blue. And these are connections between the other two main routes, and also connections to schools, major commercial areas, and public institutions before. So within our report, you will see that there are tables that describe each of the projects. So for example, here, there is a map reference. There's the area where the segment is, electoral area or municipality, the road alignment, the segment of that road, the segment length, and then another table that also describes existing conditions and the improvement categorization, and then opportunity notes as well for that particular project, potential project. High priority projects are in the report's main body, and a complete list of high, medium, and low priority projects are provided in an appendix. The report also offers some Class D cost estimates. The plan provides unit costs for improvement types, such as per sign, or kilometer of multi-use path, or kilometer of shoulder widening. And these cost estimates use recent local examples, in this case, the ongoing work on and along Shawnigan Lake Mill Bay Road. So the estimated cost to develop the full network is approximately $100 million, which approximately 58 million of that is for the high priority projects. But please note, this is not the price tag for implementing this report. This is the value assessment. There are many ways to achieve these projects, such as through collaboration with existing work programs and also through available grants. As mentioned prior, a key purpose of this report is to facilitate grant applications. In terms of implementation, the plan provides potential funding sources and provides 11 implementation strategies and recommendations. These include creating a regional active transportation funding model, collaboration with community advocates, rail with trail initiatives, and coordination with Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure. Other recommended implementation steps include creating standardized wayfinding plans and route branding, also coordination with existing capital plan upgrades and work programs, and also capacity within CVRD to coordinate and implement this plan. Finally, the plan also offers a design toolkit as an appendix to the report, and that is based off of BC's Active Transportation Design Guide. And that describes a preference for multi-use pathways parallel to roadways where possible. It describes signage, potential treatments for widened shoulders, and it also provides toolkits and options for more complete streets in more urban areas. But again, this report really is kind of outside the municipalities, which have their own plans, and it really is meant to connect those municipalities, so there is a focus on more rural roadways. And that concludes my presentation, and I'm happy to take any questions you may have.
Thank you for that. You've lowered your presentation. I've got Director Douglas and Stone. Go ahead, Director Douglas. Anyone else want on?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I have a few questions, so you can...
We'll go for a couple, and
Sure.
we'll go around to the next person. How's that sound?
That sounds great. One question I had with the report mentions that the preference is for the multi-use pass over the widened shoulders. I know at our municipality, we're working on our own master transportation plan right now. And I think traditionally many of us have viewed the widened shoulders as being beneficial for having that space for cyclists and pedestrians. However, what we've found working with our consultant on our master transportation plan is that having these shoulders can create challenges as well. With the wider roadway does encourage speeding, which obviously makes it less safe for folks wanting to get out on their bike or walking. Just wondering if you could comment on that, the challenges on, again, adding those shoulders to improve active transportation, but at the same time, it can create challenges in that regard as well.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, and that's something that we've covered in the design guide, is that some options to try to combat the potential increased vehicle speeds that can come with the wider roads. One of the options is to provide a rumble strip along the edge or along the line, essentially. That can, you know, it doesn't fit every application. The rumble strips cause some noise and some disruption, and so they'd have to be used selectively. But there are some ways to combat that being one, also proper signage as well. But yeah, that's definitely a concern with widened shoulders, and one of the reasons why multi-use path development is preferred. And it's certainly something that quite clear from the public engagement process that there is a preference for that.
Great, thanks. Another question, Mr. Chair. With the recommended projects, there's obviously a lot of focus on multi-use paths, as just said, widened shoulders, complete streets. A lot of other communities, though, to encourage active transportation are constructing or working with MODI to construct these pedestrian overpasses. And we see, you know, seems like there's dozens of them in the Capital Regional District. We see a lot on the Lower Mainland as well. I didn't see a lot of references to that in this document, although I note that some of the priority projects do indicate there are going to be crossings across the Trans-Canada Highway. Just wondering if you could comment on that, on whether you would envision these pedestrian overpasses as part of active transportation, and if that's something that should fit in this document or be pursued separately.
Yeah, so in our plan, when we do try to cross a major roadway, such as Trans-Canada Highway, we try to put that at a controlled signalized intersection where they would be able to take advantage of the pedestrian phase that's there. Typically for grade separated, we're seeing steps away from that, obviously due to cost implications, but also the idea of often when put in place, sometimes it's, you know, you're asking the pedestrians to go up and around and take the longer route. And so it kind of a little counterintuitive to giving them the priority. So yeah, we've tried to cross roads where there is existing infrastructure in place. And yeah, typically when it comes to grade separated crossings, we see those in the more urban areas, and not necessarily in this particular context.
We've got you on the list to come back. Director Stone.
Just respecting the municipal plans as well and the significant costs that go along with those investments, was there any discussion with municipal representatives about how that might work? You know, just reflecting on the regional service approach and the costs associated. Of course, we're going to be pursuing grants, but when you see numbers like $100 million and then municipal plans that may be in the tens of millions of dollars, you know, how achievable and what kind of timelines would be realistic, really, with all the existing cost pressures we have around core infrastructure?
Yeah, so definitely working and communicating and talking to each of the municipalities was a primary step, and also throughout the process we kept in contact with them and ensured that their planning processes were, you know, our network connected to theirs and complemented theirs. So yeah, that was a key focus throughout. In terms of funding, at this time there's quite a bit of kind of momentum and funding for active transportation initiatives. How long those are available, and if more available, will really tell the tale of how long this is a, you know, a 15-year plan or a 25-year plan. But we certainly see there's a lot of opportunities to dovetail with other work streams that are going on. And that will be really a key focus. As mentioned, that's, a value assessment of this infrastructure, but there's really as many ways to achieve that. And that's really I think recommending a network is one thing, but that next step of really looking at the implementation and taking the steps to coordinate with the other municipalities and work streams in the region is really critical to see this plan come to fruition.
And just,
Can I go to Mr. Farquhar first? I think he's got something
Sure.
to add.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, further to that, and Mr. Potter was bang on, this is the plan overall. The next steps with approval of the board would be looking at an overall implementation strategy, which would be inclusive of how we would coordinate with the municipalities, how the overall plan layout would be prioritized and advanced, looking at grant programs, looking at municipalities already investing, looking at the local plans that they have in place. So there's a lot further work to be done in terms of an implementation program, and we'd be looking for direction from the board on that with approval of the plan.
thank you.
Thank you.
Just one quick follow-up. I would say another crossing that seems to be successful if you can get Modi to play ball is subsurface tunnels, like the ones that we have existing are really effective and don't require the pedestrians to make these sort of big transitions to get up and over the highway. It's a lot easier to go under where possible.
Thank you. Director Nicholson.
Thank you. I liked the report. It was easy to read and well done. But I have questions about the rating criteria, particularly the issue about community benefits. And I question some of the ratings, I guess.
Yeah, well, community benefit at one point was we referred to it as safety, and then felt like there was more to it than just that. I'll be frank, it's quite difficult to come up with the different criteria. We do that specifically for each report we do, and part of that comes from the public engagement process and understanding what is important to the community. But yeah, the public benefit really is a score on just our perceived benefit to the community. It includes things such as even tourism opportunities. It's quite a wide net in terms of, economic benefits potentially. So yeah, that particular community benefit, we did our best in the report to describe that and how we quantified that. But yeah, that's the best I can provide, I'm afraid.
Follow up?
Yeah, so I guess I have a couple of concerns about this report from that perspective. And I will point out for people that all the community connections part, because I'm an electoral area, what I have is mainly community connections, and because I'm on the west side of the highway, they appeared to be rated lower. And because this is a report that's supposed to facilitate grant applications, I have significant concerns with some very important areas that would service my residents, but also from an economic development perspective, for tourism perspective. Coxsila Road, having a bike lane along Coxsila Road would be amazing from a ecotourism perspective. But that aside, I also was curious as to why that you don't, or maybe you did build in, I don't know how to say this, well, First Nations, for example, I would have been interested to have some priority placed on opportunities to partner with First Nations on projects. So that, to me, would have been an important aspect of a criteria for community benefit. And then there's also the question of the communities and who would be more likely to use the active transportation. I have a Eagle Heights neighborhood, which is so close to Duncan, but is so unsafe to walk to Duncan. So it just astounded me that it didn't come out as a higher priority. So Yeah, so I have questions, and it doesn't work for me as far as using it to be able to access grants if they're rated as lower than high.
Jason?
Yeah, so I mean, during our consultation with First Nation groups, certain projects were identified there, and that certainly impacted the scoring for the public input component of our scoring. So those projects certainly were elevated. In terms of specific areas being lower graded, again, we had to try to find a way to quantify those. For connectivity, we're looking at, a density of residents in a certain area or commercial activity. So at the end of the day, we applied the scoring to it, and it's, as I mentioned, it's an inexact science. It is kind of not a fixed list, and if there is momentum or desire for certain projects to move quicker, then there's certainly the opportunity for those for that to happen. So by no means is it start at the top of the list and work the way down. But if we did find through our process that there were some opportunities with specific projects, that did elevate them up the list. But yeah, at the end of the day, the whole network, everything that's within the high, medium, and low priority projects, there's a hope for all of those to be brought forward. But just to try to help the plan become realized, that's how we had to do it, is to try to list them, and it is a difficult process.
Director Acton.
Thank you. It sounds like that the Ministry of Transportation is willing to work with municipalities, but in my 6 years of experience, the Ministry of Transportation is just like an absent participant at best. They're not very helpful for electoral areas. So I'm just wondering, with the electoral area perspective on this plan, since the municipalities all have their own plan anyway, how much are they willing to work with electoral areas? And because we haven't seen anything really change in our community. You did mention the Mill Bay Shawnigan Lake Road connection, but it's actually quite small, and some of it was built by a developer. So we're not really moving this ball forward very quickly at all. So wondering, like, have they, unless I missed it right at the beginning, I got a phone call, but have they signed off on this plan in any way? Or is there buy-in from them?
Yeah, they were a key partner throughout the process. So we met with them early to discuss what was possible from their perspective. And they certainly have a clear understanding of the scope of this report in terms of the electoral areas and creating these connections between the municipalities, and that this plan, certainly was not going to just repeat the plans that are in place for the 4 municipalities, but rather look to connect them. So they were part of the technical advisory group. And to be honest, I've seen quite a lot of change in the Ministry of Transportation over the last few years. They've come out with their active transportation design guide, and they've really shown a recognition that active transportation is not just within a city or a town, but really addresses really critical infrastructure for people that rely on these roadways to get to commercial amenities or recreational. No, I think that traditionally there was that thought that the ministry was a little bit of a headwind towards active transportation, but I don't feel like that's the case anymore. And through this process, I think that we've developed some good relationships with the ministry, and their intent is to help see this process through. And as mentioned, they have their funding streams for the region, and they seem quite optimistic that those efforts and that funding can help realize this plan.
Right. So I hope when you're talking about, sorry, can I go, Mr. Chair, when you're talking about the ministry, that it applies to electoral areas, because we have been abandoned already several times, their commitment and them being at the table. So I look forward to that happening. Can I have another question, Mr. Chair? Or are you going to put me back on the list?
Your last question.
I guess where Shawnee and Lake is concerned, there's a bit of a missing piece here. More of the local. So I understand that this plan is just more of an upper level thing for grants, but we're doing our community, at least in my area, there's a disservice to the community because we don't have real connections identified. Like, for example, a development did come up on Renfrew Road. There could have been a connection made to get into the Beach Estates area. That was never done, but it was never identified anywhere that would make sense. And then until after the fact, you can see that this would have been a good idea to do that. And there's no, I guess, like as electoral areas, I would look to my colleagues, if you have these similar issues, because we're missing opportunities to make even just our little neighborhoods more connected, and then that branches off to the bigger picture. So.
Thank you, Director Acton. I'm just going to remind everyone that this is a broader plan, and without going deep into specifics for individual areas, even though I might do that as I'm next on the list, we want to keep our eye on the clock, and we always have the opportunity to refer to our park staff. And I think I'm going to really dovetail on a couple of things that have already been mentioned. I tend to agree with what Director Nicholson has said around the rating system, and I don't know if there was consideration given for the scoring in how areas that actually have access to active transportation networks and opportunities now have scored, and they seem to be higher than areas that like have none. And in my area, that you know, to go out on your bike to the town of Lake Cowichan is a death-defying activity. So you know, I'm wondering if that might be able to be explained a little bit as to whether there was any emphasis given on that. And my second question is about easy wins, and I'm questioning the MOTI's participation. You know, you may have gotten encouraging signals from the folks that you're dealing with, but I think the electoral area experience has been one of missed opportunities. And why I say that is those of us that have been trying to get active transportation in widened shoulders and the likes, we cajole and harass our MOTI folks to get an extra, you know, half meter or meter of paving done on the side of the road, and we, if we're successful, we get it, and then the line painters come along and give a half meter in fog line, and you've only got a meter and a half of roadside pathway, which is effectively useless. So you know, do you really feel that MOTI is on board? Because they may sound like they're participatory at this planning level, but we don't seem to see that translated to actually on the ground results. And we've missed some easy wins. Thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a key purpose of this report. And again, one of the key recommendations for the implementation is to build a little bit more capacity within CVRD to help ensure that when there's development happening or when there's opportunities arising, that those connections are made and those opportunities are more likely to be realized. So I think what I'm hearing, and we certainly heard throughout the process, is that those are not in place at this stage, and there are missed opportunities due to that. But again, that's a real key goal of this plan, is to try to establish some capacity within CVRD to ensure those connections and those opportunities are met in the future.
Thanks for that. So I'm just going to review the speakers list. We've got directors Martman, Deck, Wilson, and then round 2, Douglas and Stone. Oh, sorry. Yeah, no, that's right. Before we go to round 2, we've got Director Justice and then Nicholson. And I'm going to ask everyone to please be succinct. Director Martman.
Succinct. Okay, thank you. And what is dark social? That's succinct. No, actually, so thank you for the report. And in your appendices, you refer to engagement through a term called dark social, and I'm not sure what that is.
I would have to ask our public engagement specialist on that one. So she led the public engagement process. Dark social, is that what you mentioned? Was that the term?
Yes, it's on page 14 of the appendices.
Okay, I have to follow up with that and find out what that means. I'm not sure offhand.
Okay, thanks. The question I have is just in relationship to other jurisdictions. Sometimes consultants will go out and compare this to active transportations done by other regional districts. Can you speak to that at all?
Yeah, there hasn't been a lot of projects done like this for regional areas. There was one done for the Comox Valley. So part of our process was to speak to the providers of that plan, just to get a sense of the unique challenges of a plan like this. This is quite a unique plan, being a regional plan compared to most active transportation plans. Most active transportation plans are for one community, so for example Duncan or Ladysmith, and so it's a different focus, and the types of projects are very different as well. So having kind of early communication with others that have done a regional plan like this was really critical, just in keeping us in focus, that we are not reinventing the wheel for municipalities, but at the same time, it's critical that we understand those plans and connect to those plans and try to augment those plans. So we did have some discussions with another firm that did that, and we certainly learned a lot from that.
Thank you. Director Deck.
Thank you, Chair. I was very glad to hear that safety is your first priority, because that is certainly the most concerning, well, it's one of the biggest concerns of people along Newbow Road, Mead Creek Road, and Marble Bay Road. And so I'll be glad to see if those priorities come to fruition. And I just I've got a question, because MOTI, when I always ask about, or my residents do, ask about rumble strips or speed humps, which are not the, just sort of gentler speed bumps, MOTI is opposed to those because it can damage plows and sanding trucks. So I'm just wondering what a rumble strip, how they feel about rumble strips, for example.
Yeah, so when we spoke to them early on, we presented a list of potential options and things that included, for the purpose of traffic calming, and yeah, they made clear that speed humps or speed bumps were not something that they would be interested in supporting, due to the fact that it impacts how they maintain the roads. If there's, for example, a snow plow needed to be taken down the road, that would not work for them. But for rumble strips, they felt that was something that they could, that would be okay with their current maintenance practice. So again, we're definitely not recommending that rumble strips be placed on all shoulders or roadways. There's some unique characteristics and considerations for that application. But that was something that the ministry was willing to entertain.
Follow up, Director Deck.
Thank you. And just one more. Mead Creek Road has unique issues around property lines, ownership, and rights of way. So I'm wondering, I see some proposals to do pathways along there, but our area manager from Moti held his phone above our road on Mead Creek Road, and he said, I don't think we own this road. So at least in that particular little section. So is that going to be a problem, trying to run pathways along some of these old roads that have undetermined ownership?
Yeah, that's part of the first steps, kind of moving forward, is understanding those restrictions and those limitations. Yeah, so certainly each project within this list needs to go through further development in terms of, conceptual design, detailed design, public and potentially public engagement as well. So these are just identifying the routes that we feel are important to create a regional network. But there is a lot of work that needs to be done to bring those to fruition. And unique challenges for each, yeah.
Next, we have Director Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Is this thing working? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Good. Thank you, Jason. Is there anyone else here who's a little bit amazed at $100 million and $700,000 per kilometre? I mean, nobody's even looked at this one, and I just can't see where's the money coming from. I know there's grants out there, but explain to me where we're going to get $100 million from, and then commit to $700,000 per kilometres. These figures are just astronomical. I'm lost on this one. Thank you.
Yeah, they're higher than they were a couple of years ago, as everything from apples to infrastructure seems to be going up in price. So yeah, what we did is we just took, we obviously want to use examples that are local and as new as possible. So those are the costs that that went into the Shawnigan Lake Mill Bay Road improvements. But again, that's a value assessment of the infrastructure. There's a lot of kilometers of roadways here that we're recommending improvements. But the critical piece of this plan is to dovetail with existing work streams and to look for grant applications. And there's a substantial amount of grants available for active transportation now. And so what this plan is intended to do is to tap into that money. So yeah, so it's a little bit of it's a big number to contemplate, but again, it's not the price tag for this plan. And again, if you can think of it as a value assessment, I think is a better way to
Yeah, and follow up, please, Mr. Chair. And yeah, I understand that prices have gone up in the last 2 years. So perhaps the price tag was 50 million 2 years ago. But even so, even if we got 50% or 70% of 100 million, we still got to find $30 million from somewhere. Who's going to be paying for the bit that we can't fund by grant funding? I just don't understand these astronomical figures. $700,000 per kilometre. I'm lost on this one. I'm sorry, just a comment, but I'm totally lost on these costs here.
Thank you, Director Wilson. And I'm just going to remind everyone, just looking at the clock, it seems to be staring at me. We don't have a lot of time left, and we still got some things to work through. I have Directors Justice, Segal, and then Stone and Nicholson. Have I missed anyone? Director Justice.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think my comments follow up nicely to Director Wilson's. I'm also sort of agog at that level of funding, at levels of funding for all sorts of things that we're up to. And I recognize that this plan, the primary purpose is to access available grants. But I was also intrigued by your mention, Mr. Potter, of opportunities with respect to route branding. And though I don't generally value that sort of thing, I'm curious about the experiences of other jurisdictions and that you might know of. For example, what sorts of routes work for this sort of branded funding? What level of funding has been secured by other jurisdictions for this sort of thing? And how it's sort of worked out generally. So can you talk to us about what you know about route branding?
Yeah, there are some recommendations in the report that are much lower cost item but very impactful. So wayfinding, I think that describes if you were to take the Cowichan Valley Trail now, you may have difficulty finding your way along it. Stops and starts, different types of signage. It was once called the Great Canadian Trail. So having wayfinding is a critical piece to get people from obviously A to B. And then in terms of branding, so for example, the Cowichan Valley Trail has its own branding. So taking initiatives to augment that. And then also for the recommended east route, for example, there might be its own branding, for example, with the signage that it is used for the wayfinding along that route. So those are much lower cost items that have a large impact in the ease of use of those routes.
Follow up?
Yeah, and I think I actually must have misunderstood you because I was thinking that perhaps you were talking about a funding source with respect to branding of trails, but so my mistake, I'm sorry.
Director Segal.
Thank you. Taking into consideration that this is a plan, and I'm sure that once like an actual work plan comes forward with specific sections, we would discuss the funding and, through budget time, things like that. I would like to move this recommendation.
We have it moved and seconded. We still have people on the speakers list, and I think there might be a proposed amendment to the resolution that was printed. So can we just, I already moved and said we already had it moved and seconded. Can we just pretend that didn't happen and hear what our corporate
I will
secretary
read the
has to say?
recommendation that was brought forward to me earlier today, this morning. That it be recommended to the board on September 27th, 2023, that the 2023 CVRD Regional Active Transportation be approved. That therefore this committee of the whole would be bringing it forward for later on's approval at the board meeting.
So it's been moved and seconded, and discussion. I have, Director Segal, did you want to speak to this?
No, I'm okay, but also can't we make, if whoever wants to make the motion around the amendment, can't we do that and vote on that and then come back to vote on this one as amended?
The amended motion's on the floor.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So you've passed, I've got 3 speakers left on the list, Douglas, Stone, and Nicholson. Director Douglas.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, in terms of adopting the active transportation plan, as I mentioned earlier, our municipality is developing its own master transportation plan that's going to be finalized later this fall, and I hope that the 2 documents can be aligned with one another. Is there a way we can tweak the wording of the motion just to acknowledge that there may be updates to the plan based on what happens in North Cowichan or other municipalities in the region?
Our exemplary staff have anticipated that. Mr. Farquhar.
Mr. Chair, through to Director Douglas, a key element of this plan as presented is collaboration and recognizing it's going to be partnerships, not only between CVRD and the municipalities, but also between the CVRD, our First Nation communities, the CVRD and MOT. So certainly we understand that other plans adopted will be updated over time. So this is not indicative of a fixed plan in place today. It's a plan that is going to be moving forward and will be responsive to other plans that are updated. The other key element I want to highlight is the fact that this is a regional plan. It doesn't take away from other plans and those priorities within those plans, whether it be municipal active transportation plans or within our electoral areas where we have community parks, trails, master plans that also identify roadside pathway and trail opportunities and identify those as high priorities. The board will be collectively dealing with all of those going forward. So, well, this plan is trying to focus on those regional network elements that as Mr. Potter has noted, are opportunistic, or there's collaborative opportunities that could advance things, giving it a bit of a higher priority in terms of the public feedback as well. They're just as important in the community parks, trails, master plans and in the municipal plans when the board or municipal councils are dealing with potential for applications. So it's going to be a collaborative process moving forward. So definitely there's lots of wiggle room in terms of this plan looking to continue to fit with municipal plans.
And are you suggesting the recommended resolution on the floor is appropriate for?
I am, Mr. Chair.
Contemplating Director Douglas's remarks. Excellent. Yes. Thank you. Director Stone, any comment?
I just wanted to say two things. It's been mentioned. This is a high-level plan. This is talking about routing and stuff. The specifics will come, but the commentary around MOTI working well with municipalities is patently false. So I hear all of this great virtue, and but the actions of MOTI speak louder than words. The latest implementation they've done in our community made the Trans-Canada Trail users have to cross the highway 5 crossings to get from one side of the highway to the other, when previously it was 3, based on some metric that they've developed. So don't be so quick to jump on the MOTI as a new beast narrative, because their actions typically speak louder than words.
Director Nicholson.
I don't support this plan, and I don't think it does what we need. And I get that it's a high-level regional connectivity plan, but one of the main purposes is to be able to access grants. It is not going to help me access grants in our Area E. And we talk about the need to build complete communities, 15-minute communities, or whatever you want to say, to make it easier for people to get around. And we talk about safety being everyone's priority. And so from my perspective, while regional connectivity is really important in the long run, right now it is more important to deal with community connections so that people can walk outside their homes and get to a store or whatever safely without being, I don't know, it just doesn't work for me. And I would like to refer it back to staff, maybe to consider how the rating scheme worked for the community connections part of it, because it from my perspective, it's really missing the boat. And that's within the context of understanding it's a regional plan. But when you have to apply for a grant, they expect there to be a regional active transportation plan, and I'm sure they'll look and see how it's rated, and that's just not going to be helpful to the rural areas.
I heard a motion.
Second the motion.
We have a motion to refer. Any discussion on the propriety of referral? Motion is to refer to staff to look at the rating system. I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? The motion to refer is defeated. The motion.
Can you count that, please?
It was substantial. The motion was defeated.
Hey, Mr.
Director Douglas?
I know you want to close. Just to clarify regarding my previous question, and so I know I'm getting right into specifics here, but the example I referred to earlier was with the shoulder widths on rural roads. So this document refers to 1.5 meters as being the minimum. We're working on our master transportation plan at North Cowichan, which is focused on many of the same roads as this plan, where we're talking about 0.5 meters on rural roads. And our consultant has advised us that the narrower rural roads, and this is counterintuitive for a lot of us, does slow down traffic. So I'm not an expert on these things, but we're hearing one recommendation from one consultant, another from this consultant. And again, I just want to make sure these documents are aligned with one another if we're talking about, Westholme or Bell McKinnon or Herd Road. So if there is an understanding that this document can be updated afterwards, depending on what happens, say at North Couch with our master transportation plan. How does that, like, what does that look like? Does that mean this document we're reviewing today at this COW meeting gets updated by the consultant again after the contract is finished? Or is it the implementation framework that settles what we want for rural road widths, whether it's going to be 0.5 meters or 1.5 meters, or if there's going to be a different standard for arterial or collector or local roads, which I didn't see the distinction between those three in the hierarchy in the design guidelines for the report today.
Let's go to Mr. Farquhar for an explanation.
Mr. Chair, thank you. Through to Director Douglas. It'll be the latter. So it definitely at the municipal level, if the municipal plans identify a different standard to what is advocated within the regional plan, and the municipalities are moving forward with that level, then the regional plan will adapt to that, because at the end of the day, it's about regional connectivity. These are guidelines, these are recommendations within the regional plan. It's giving an overlay in terms of how either a roadside pathway could be developed in terms of separated or with road shoulders. So the report's giving some framework for that. But we also understand the implementation process will also identify challenges on some roads where the 1.5 meters might just not be possible at all. There may be other considerations given in terms of controlling road speeds, et cetera. So please look at it at that level. It's a regional plan. It's about the network opportunities. It's about opportunities to go after grant funding and collaboration. So, thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. So what I'm going to suggest is we put this resolution to a vote, and I'm also going to maybe I reluctantly suggest that there might be a motion to review rating guidelines and the report in a 6-month time frame, and that way we can at least know that we're going to have a look at it and some of the issues that Director Douglas has brought up. But let's deal with the issue of the motion on the floor. Call the question. All those in favor?
Mr. Chair, could you, there's been a lot of discussion here. Can we read the resolution one more time, please?
Sure.
That it be recommended to the board on September 27th, 2023, that the 2023 CVRD Regional Active Transportation Plan be approved.
So I'll call the question. All those in favor, keep your hands up. Any on at home? Okay, all those opposed. Let's count the opposed. That's what we do here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I count 6. Hands still up? The motion carries.
Or is it 5? Because the chair was.
The motion carries. We had, yep. So I would go to, is there an interest in a subsequent resolution to review rating guidelines and other items in the report in a 6-month period? Mr. Farquhar, we don't have a resolution on the floor yet, and it doesn't look like we're going to get one, so it looks like we're moving.
Mr. Chair?
Oh, Director Acton?
Thank you. I was just wondering if this would be appropriate, if we could have a conversation at electoral areas, because I think there's a big difference here that maybe we could work on some electoral areas issues and how we would have our own funding, gas tax, whatever, for some of the projects, and how we could move forward with some of those. Like maybe just as a discussion, as a add-on to this, doesn't have to be regional recreation, but more of an electoral areas recreation.
So thank you for that. I'm going to go to Mr. Farquhar, and perhaps we can refer this to electoral area services. Mr. Farquhar.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So as noted in the report, if the plan is approved by the board later today, there's a lot more work to be done. There's all the elements around how this will be further developed, and staff will bring forward key recommendations that are highlighted in the Active Transportation Plan around how to advance the coordination and implementation of the Regional Active Transportation Network, inclusive of budgetary and resource considerations. So within that framework as well, certainly if there's interest at the electoral area level, some of that could be considered at that point in time as well.
Director Nicholson?
I think the problem here is that electoral area from my perspective, electoral area needs are not being served here. And this is a really interesting example of how our system doesn't work very well. And it's also plays into this capacity issue we have at the CVRD in terms of where staff will spend their time doing the work and implementing this. And I just, I do think we need to have a conversation at Electoral Area Services about how we can advance this, this issue and what it means in terms of when we do regional projects versus what we need to do for electoral areas. And like when you look at this plan, it makes sense at a high level, but it's going to guide what happens in electoral areas. And we have so little ability to do anything. It just seems to me that we should be trying to work towards a plan that's going to support the electoral areas as well as coordinate with the municipalities on what they're up to. So yeah, this is just not working for me.
So I'm looking for a motion.
I'd like to make a motion to refer this report to Electoral Area Services for further discussion.
Is there a seconder? We have a seconder. Any further discussion? Director Douglas?
With the previous motion that we passed, that we are still referring this to the board for adoption?
Yes.
Of course, okay.
Yep.
All right.
Call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? I have one opposed, two opposed. Thank you. The motion carries. I'm going to ask everyone to dig deep, find another gear. Moving to R2. Who's presenting on that report?
R2 is report from the Corporate Services Coordinator.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, everything went dead there for a minute. What was going on with referring to EASC?
The motion to refer to EASC has been approved. We're on R2.
Okay.
I'd like to move R2.
We have a mover of R2. Seconded. Do we need any discussion? Looking at the screen. Seeing, we should have it, oh no, we can read it at the board. Everybody's clear? All those in favor? Any opposed? Not opposed? Motion carries. R3. We have a mover of R3. Is there a seconder for R3? Seconded by Director Staples. Director Nicholson.
Thank you. This really raised some issues for me, and it's not that I want to take away from this report and so forth, but I did want to bring up what I was thinking when I read this report. So, you know, recognizing that recreation centers are really important for the quality of life in our region. You know, people use them for skill development, fun, community building, and so forth. But recreation center infrastructure costs are a significant proportion of our budget. And you can see that in this report. So well-planned asset management is really important. But I just came back from UBCM and we talked a lot about emergency preparedness. And so we need to, and we also talked about housing and all the growth that we're experiencing, and you know, there's just a lot of impacts that we need to start planning for. And we heard over and over that the climate change impacts like drought and heat and flooding and wildfire for our communities across BC is going to continue, and it's going to increase. So recreational centers are more than ever what we need to think about as an important investment for our communities, but not just for the kind of things that we've done in the past. So I guess the other thing that really concerns me is most of our recreation facilities are aging. So we continue to pour money to keep into them to keep the doors open, and it'll be more and more money to keep the doors open. So we need to understand, I think, a lot more about energy efficiency of our centers and how well they're going to be meeting the needs that we're going to have in the future. We haven't done that kind of thinking or planning, And I think I am very excited that we have a regional recreation function now that will allow us to start to do that in a more holistic way. So I'm just raising that issue because I think that's what we need to think about doing. And, you know, replacing the roof on the Cowichan Community Center, for example, is a huge investment. But at the same time, we need to do it because it's going to be leaking soon. But it's like you can continue just going down the road and putting this stuff in, but it might not be the best investment, and we need to think that through. Thanks.
Just before I go to Director Segal, keep in mind that these are funded pre-approved programs in the 5-year financial plan, and the rationale for them being here is more in regards to RFPs and the like, so that the timing can be arranged so that they can be done during the closed season. Valid points brought up by Director Nicholson. This is a little bit of a different animal in that I think the staff need this in order to ensure that the work gets done, and some of this is critically required work. Director Segal next.
Thank you. I've been in touch with Ms. Little at the Cape, so I want to speak to number 2, the Kerry Park Rec Center item. Just in the way that it's funded in the report, it says to be funded by short-term borrowing, but I've been in talks with Ms. Little about using capital and operation reserves where possible, just to reduce requisition on the impacts to requisition on this, and then any additional supplementals that we can talk about during budget season, we can make that decision there if we want to increase requisition for those other projects. So I don't know if I need to make like an amendment to change that funding, or if those conversations, it's okay, I've had those conversations.
My understanding is this is an authorization to proceed to a public tender process, and that we can, we've got budget basically on the doorstep, and all of those decisions can be made then. I have one quick question that I want to pose to staff, and I don't know if Mr. Williams is the right person to ask, but given the new arena condenser chiller at Kerry Park and the older technology at Lake Cowichan, was there any consideration, or is there any merit in looking at the new technology that's being used in the one, because they're basically sister buildings and facilities? Or am I going to have to wait till the board to get an answer from Mr. Wakeham? You appeared on the screen. Did you hear the question?
Can you repeat it, please? Yeah.
Just looking at, there's 2 different technologies that are at play here. One is a more efficient, using less chlorine at Kerry Park. The Lake Cowichan system is an older system, I gather, is using more chlorine, but it's replacing what's there. It's not going into new technology. Is there any merit in the 2 or buying the same technology at the same time for both facilities?
Director Morrison, good question. Couple things. You mentioned it's chlorine. It's not chlorine. It's ammonia in our plants. Number one. The Cowichan Lake Arena just had their chiller replaced not that long ago, and so did CCC. So even though they need to go hand in hand, in our opinion, the Cowichan Lake Arena will be it's operating fine. That chiller just needs, or sorry, that condenser needs to be replaced, and it'll work fine with the chiller it has, specifically to this, the Cowichan Lake facility.
Thank you. Questions, are the motions been moved and seconded? Any further Mr. Wakeham?
Mr. Chair, if I can just comment about Director Scull's comments. Yes, I spoke to Kim Little as well, and she did make Director Scull did make a request to use more capital reserves and operating reserves. If you approve the motion the way it is, you're correct. This is so we can get out to bid. but it also says in here that we would put these, the supplemental reports, which are attachments, into the 2024 budget. And in the supplementals, you'll see the methods of funding. So I do think you should talk about if there is a desire to change the method of funding at Kerry Park. And I could just comment on that. So my understanding right now, well, the project right now is designed with short-term borrowing for the full $650,000. My understanding is Director Segal was looking to use all the capital reserves, approximately $288,000, and to take us down to the minimum operating reserve policy amount of $250,000. So it would leave approximately $111,000 short-term borrowing. And that option is doable, but we just need to be aware of that's going to affect a couple things. Really what you're going to do is you're just going to defer the short-term borrowing 1 year till 2025. The reason for that is when we look at 2025, we have other capital projects that we will bring forward as well. And those add up to about $450,000. Those two items, which are HVAC heat pump units and sports field irrigation systems, those were planned to be used from the reserves. So if the committee agrees with Director Segal's to use the operating reserves and capital reserves in 2024, that's fine. And some may argue that maybe interest rates will go down in 1 year. So it might be, to some degree, maybe a wise thing to do. But as long as the committee understands that's what the effect is going to be if we use the amended motion to change the funding.
Okay, I hear you loud and clear, and this is one of the things that's challenging when we introduce new information on the fly, and I think we need to have finance weigh in on this, but I think our CAO is about to talk to us about this.
Yeah, just as we're entering into the budget process, I would just recommend if there is a financial item that we give finance the time to actually consider it along with the department head rather than doing it on the fly. You'll probably get a little bit more information that will help with that decision.
So the question that I have is, we have a motion on the floor, it hasn't been amended, we do have budget considerations coming up. Is there downside risk to approving the motion as it has been made and is on the floor? Who can provide us with direction on that? Oh, here comes Ms. Bowen. I see you, Director Acton.
Through the chair to Director Segal, we could leave it as it is right now and do a budget amendment afterwards once we know more costs and see what the actual reserves are sitting at and making sure that we're not dipping below the 2 months for the operating reserve.
I'm inclined to like that. Director Acton.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. As a big contributor to Kerry Park, I think it would be wise to wait. We're not, I don't have the information in front of me as to how this would affect going forward, as if this was, sorry. So we have future items that would draw out of our reserves where it would only be A, B, C, and D paying for. So we're the contributors that have built up that fund. So is this an item that would be split up regionally? So then I don't think it's a wise move to make any changes at this moment because we're not looking at the big picture.
Thank you for that, Director Segal. To close.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you to Ms. Bowen for that. The impression that I was given was that there will be more supplementals coming that we're going to use the operating and capital reserves. And so I wanted to make the decision to increase requisition with the guidance of the South Cowichan Commission, which hasn't yet been formed. So it just feels like it's an awkward place that I'm in right now. But if it makes sense to just go like this and we can do a budget amendment later, then okay.
I think it does because we will all be far better informed as to the ins and outs of the financial when it is brought to us in the form of a report. So with that, I look to everyone. I will call the question. All those in favor? Are there any opposed? None opposed. The motion carries. Next item is Boyd.
Thank you, Chair. R4, we have the report from the Manager, Arts and Cultural Division regarding the 2024 pre-budget approval for CPAC Operable Wall. This recommendation before you on your agenda package was tweaked this morning. So that it be recommended to the board on September 27th, 2023, that the 2023 budget for function F426, Cowichan Performing Arts Center, be amended in order to complete construction of the approved theater renovation project by increasing capital expenses by $95,000 and increasing the transfer from operating reserve by $95,000.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Director Abbott?
In reading that recommended motion, the clerk mentioned 2023 budget year. I think you meant 2024 budget year. Oh. Excuse me.
Director Martman?
Thank you, Chair. Just a question on, under the financial considerations, it talks about the impact if this does not happen. And I was not clear on the impact to the revenue stream other than it would be negatively impacted. Is it significant if this is not done?
Mr. Williams?
Here on behalf of Patrick LeBlanc, who's the theater manager that couldn't be here today. Through to Director Martman, it is a situation of if we don't put the wall in, we can't separate the two spaces, and which will allow us to generate more revenue. Do I have an exact, can I quantify that on the spot? No, I can't. But it was part of the design, and it is something that we'd like to move ahead with.
Seeing no other hands, I will call the question. All those in favor? Are there any opposed? Not opposed, the motion carries. Ms. Boyd?
Thank you, Chair. We have a report from the Recycling and Waste Management Operations Department regarding the Vancouver Island Coastal Communities Committee on Solid Waste and Circular Economy.
Thought I saw your hand going up. Oh, Mr. Postings. Fire away.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The report before you this is a conversation that definitely the board has had over the last number of months about where the future of solid waste and recycling is within the region and also on Vancouver Island. So this is a request from your other regional partners about participation in this new committee. So hopefully the report provides an overview exactly what the terms of reference is for the participation in this committee, and happy to answer any questions if there are any.
Director Stone?
Yeah, I think the material's self-explanatory to a degree. This is the evolution of the AVICC Solid Waste Committee. I was the appointee to that never met. I'm not sure if it's met in the last number of years, but this is the re-emergence of that committee and recognizing that, you know, we have this conversation about Robanco and exporting our garbage, that we need to find solutions. So I would move the recommendations, including that Ian Morrison be named the elected representative from the board, and I haven't had an opportunity yet to convince an alternate, but maybe Director McClinton seems to have just volunteered, but we can have that discussion over lunch and just finalize that piece of it at the board meeting, because that is to go to tonight's board. So I would make that motion, and we can, if we have a number of hands interested in either serving or has an alternate, we could leave the designated name out until the board this afternoon. We could talk about it over lunch.
Director Nicholson.
Thanks. I support collaborative island-wide initiative to address our waste challenges, because we don't have an economy of scale to do it ourselves. However, I don't see that the terms of reference support strategic initiatives to work collaboratively with island or regional districts to handle waste more cost and environmentally efficiently. And, you know, the purpose drives the work that gets done, and I would propose that we need a purpose statement in the terms of reference that talks about moving the communities towards island-based zero waste solutions.
Thank you. I'm just going to throw a little history out here really quickly. This group did a whole bunch of really good work a number of years ago, went with some recommendations to the province, and for some reason the province didn't only say no, they kind of said hell no. and that sent everybody sort of back on their heels a little bit. And what's occurred is a reemergence of the regional districts looking at the fact that, much to along the lines of what Director Nicholson has said, is that we as a region can do a lot of good work that can further the goal of zero waste. So it's, there's, as you saw in the report, there was still some money in the kitty. It looks like it'll help with operations for a couple, 3 years. And I think that there's great possibilities here in advancing zero waste, collaboration, best practices. So I think this is a really, this has a lot of merit. And if you want to move the, you move the resolution with my name. Is there a seconder? Moved and seconded. Any, yeah, go ahead, Director Stone.
I think it would be worth, you know, Director Nicholson's point's well taken, and maybe perhaps we could write a letter to the committee requesting that that be a priority and that purpose statement drive that engagement work, because I think that is the intent from the discussions that I've had with the AVICC executive. So perhaps we can just send a letter to them saying, we're excited to participate in this, but these really are the priorities from the CVRD's perspective.
Ms. Miles Wilson. Here.
So I just wanted to point out that moving forward, using zero waste principles is in the vision statement of the document. You might want to see it incorporated throughout, but Mr. Postings may have more to say to that regard. But it is front and center right in the vision statement that those are the principles that we would move forwards in.
And Director Stone's recommendation, I think, could easily be addressed with subsequent resolution at the board meeting this afternoon. So with that, we have a resolution on the floor. Any further hands? Call the question. All those in favor? Are there any opposed? None opposed. The motion carries. Ms. Boyd.
Thank you, Chair. We have R6, report from the Parks and Trails Division regarding license of use agreement renewal with School District Number 79, Cowichan Valley Trail, Chemainus section.
Moved. Seconded. Director Manhouse. Oh, it's already there. Yeah, he did. All those in favor? Any opposed? Unopposed, the motion carries. Ms. Boyd.
Thank you, Chair. We have no unfinished business, no new business, and I don't see anyone in the gallery for question period. We have no closed, and it would be a motion to adjourn.
Seconded. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Lunch is ready. Thank you.